Selim woke early and hurried to Kassir's house. "My friend," he said, "I dreamt of the most beautiful stranger all night, and this morning I have made up my mind to ask her to become my wife, for I love her to distraction, and I cannot live without her. She is the most beautiful woman that I've ever seen." "Alas, Selim, you know not what you are about to do. You have seen this maiden but a few hours, and you know nothing of her but what she has chosen to tell you. Surely you would not marry a beautiful form that might hide an evil heart." "My mind is made up, Kassir, and I will marry her." "Selim," said Kassir, "she has bewitched you. I am sure of it. Even if you will not put away the idea of marrying her, at least wait before you take a step that may ruin your whole life." Selim shook his head. "No, no, Kassir, I cannot wait." "I implore you to not be hasty," said Kassir. Selim was silent for a while, and then he said, "I will delay the marriage if you can, at this moment, offer me one grain of proof that this beautiful creature is as evil as you seem to think. If you can do this, I will refrain from asking her to be my wife, until I have shown you, as I easily shall, that she is good and innocent of any wrong." "I have no proof," said Kassir, "but I know that I'm right. I felt her to be evil when I first looked on her." "You have no proof, and yet you insist upon your foolishness," said Selim, growing angry. "You are as full of fancies as a child or crazed old woman muttering suspicions to herself. You must be sick, Kassir, or perhaps you are jealous that you did not think of marrying her yourself. You are my closest friend, and when you should rejoice with me over my love for a beautiful maiden, you try instead to poison my mind against her." "Forgive me," Kassir said sadly. "I see that you will not change your intent, but my words are useless. It's only the love I have for you that's prompted me to speak thus. Don't let us part in anger, we who have never quarrelled yet." Selim took his hand. "My friend," he said, "I spoke harshly in words that I didn't mean. I know that you are thinking only of my good, but I know also that you are mistaken, and time will show you your error. You will be the happiest guest at my marriage, for your joy at my good fortune will exceed that of all my other friends as much as your love for me exceeds theirs." "May heaven send that I am wrong," said Kassir, but in his heart he knew that he was right. Selim returned home, and presenting himself at the maiden's apartment, asking her to become his wife. Her modest downward glance concealed the triumph in her eyes. "My lord, you do too great an honour to one who is alone at the mercy of the world, having neither friends nor riches. May I make you a worthy wife?" When Selim, happy and rejoicing, had left her, the witch turned to her servant. "We shall be very comfortable here, and my skill and power will increase daily. The young man is so much in love that he'll have no suspicions of anything that I may do. Life will be very pleasant for us now." Thus, to her great satisfaction, and against the advice of his friend, did Selim marry a witch. Kassir spoke no more of his suspicions, but Selim's wife knew of them, and she hated him. She determined that his friendship with her husband must be broken, lest at any time his suspicions harmed her, and to this purpose she often spied upon Kassir in his own home in the guise of an animal, seeking a way that she might accomplish her end. It came about as she had wished, but not in the way she had hoped, and her success was also the means of giving Kassir the proof of his suspicions. One night, as Kassir was working late on a fine piece of carving, he became aware of someone watching him, and looked up to see a large black cat staring at him from the floor. He spoke to it, and it jumped onto the low table where he was working, and sat near him, always watching him with his large, unblinking emerald eyes. Kassir tried to continue with his work, but the animal's stare seemed to drag his eyes to its own, and he stared back. "It looks at me as though it hated me," he thought, and fascinated, he couldn't turn away. At last, thinking, "How foolish I'm being," He made an effort and broke his gaze and stood up to drive the animal away, so that he might continue with his work. In the same moment, the cat sprang at him, clawing at his eyes. Kvasir flung it from him, and it ran for the window. He grasped at its neck as it jumped out, but it slipped from him, leaving only a handful of black fur behind. He brushed the fur from his hands and shuttered the window, shuddering a little as he remembered the look in its eyes. He sat down again at his work, but could do no more that night. The strange uneasiness of his mind, and after a few minutes he rose to go to bed. Before he left the room, he glanced towards the window. Below it, where the cat's fur had lain, was a lock of woman's hair. Kvasir picked it up. It was fine and very long, and its shining blackness gleamed with bluish tints in the lamplight. He thought, I know of only one woman with hair as beautiful as this, and she is Selim's wife. Now perhaps he will believe me. But Selim didn't believe his friend. When Kvasir brought him the hair on the following day and told him his story, Selim sent for his wife. She hid her terror, denied that the hair was hers, wept and asked how anyone could believe such lies of a poor defenceless woman in a strange land. And even in the face of Kvasir's proof of her guilt, Selim accepted her word. He accused Kvasir of jealousy and spite, and declared that he would number among his friends no one who did not respect and trust his wife, and forbade Kvasir ever to enter his house again. Kvasir knew that it was useless to argue further, and left his friend sorrowfully, while the witch smiled to herself at the successful ending of what had been a dangerous predicament for herself. Although Kvasir no longer came to Selim's house, and though the two young men no longer even spoke to one another if they met in the street, the witch knew how much her husband grieved in his heart for the loss of his friend, and she feared that Selim might yet be persuaded by Kvasir's suspicions as long as there was still a chance of their friendship being renewed, so she determined that Kvasir must die. With the help of her servant, she spent 3 nights in preparing the necessary magic, and at midnight on the 4th day she put her spell on Kvasir. From that moment he became weak and tired. He cared not for food or drink, and his limbs felt like lead. When he found that no doctors could cure him, or even tell the name or cause of his strange malady, he knew that it was the witch's evil work, and nothing could save him from death. He sent for materials and his tools, and with his remaining strength he set himself to fashion his last work of art, a little ivory box. When it was completed, it was the most beautiful thing that he had ever made, for his whole soul and heart had been in the work, and would forever remain in it. Then Kvasir sent for his most trusted servant and said, When I am dead, take this box to my friend Selim, give it into his hands alone, telling him that it was the last work I ever did, and that it's my last gift to him. Tell him that when he is lonely or in trouble, he is to open the box. His instructions given, Kvasir lay back on his bed and closed his eyes. Selim had heard of Kvasir's illness, but hadn't thought it was serious. When, however, he heard it rumoured that no doctor could find a cure and that Kvasir was dying, he hurried to his friend's house, forgetting everything that had come between them, and remembering only their earlier love for one another. But he was too late to see Kvasir alive, for he arrived within an hour of his death. He was overcome with grief, for he had wished to ask his friend's pardon for all he had said to him when they last spoke. Before he left the house, Kvasir's servant handed him the little ivory box and said, My master bade me give you this when he was dead. It was the last thing he ever made, and he said it was his last gift to you. When you are lonely or in trouble, you are to open it. Selim took the box, and his sorrow was lightened a little as he thought, Kvasir must have forgiven me, or he would not have made me a gift before he died. From this time, Selim began to prosper. His merchandise sold for the highest prices, and his vessels always reached port safely with their rich cargoes, although ships of other merchants were often wrecked and their cargoes lost. All this was due, although he didn't know it, to his wife, who was, with her evil powers, ordained all she wished, and she desired much success and power for her husband and failure for his rivals. Selim soon became the richest merchant in the city and a man of increasing importance, but little by little he lost his friends, and people began to feel that there was something strange about one who was always so successful. Although they couldn't name it, they felt that it was an evil influence that gave Selim his good fortune. In spite of his prosperity, Selim was not truly happy, and sometimes he longed again for the time when he and Kassir had passed their days together and enjoyed every hour of their lives. One day, when he felt more sad than usual, Selim remembered Kassir's message, given to him with the ivory box. "When you are lonely or in trouble, you are to open it." And he brought out the little box and looked at it, thinking, "Perhaps there's a letter from Kassir inside that he may give me comfort." And he opened the box. It was quite empty.